And welcome back to The Line. Many New Mexicans, especially here in Albuquerque, are concerned about crime. Here at New Mexico in Focus, we've noticed that more people seem to be going online to Facebook groups and comment sections of news stories to complain about judges letting people who are committing crimes off too easy. Now, there's a website called Clear the Bench that's encouraging voters to vote out judges that they feel that are not taking crime seriously. And Dan, 2018, as we've been talking about here, is an election year. How big is crime going to be in this election, and what can any individual person, how can they position themselves to be good on crime in an election year here in New Mexico? What's the deal?
I mean, you talk to anybody about elections anywhere, crime and education, or I think since we first had the first election, it's been talking about crime and education. The problem, though, I believe, is this whole ability to get rid of judges, I think, or retain them. It's this whole, I mean, there's down the ballot, you get this judicial information that comes out that says, hey, keep them or let them go. Rarely, if ever, does it say let them go. Most people don't even know who judges are. Most people aren't paying attention to it. You got to not retain them, and then they got to stand for election. So it's not, like, hey, if I vote no and get rid of the guy today, he's gone tomorrow. It's, you got to vote to say you're not retaining them, then they have to stand at the next election cycle. And so I think that it just seems very onerous to, the governor can appoint you, but then it's very onerous to get rid of somebody once the governor's appointed them. And so I don't expect to see any sweeping changes. I mean, there really hasn't been. I mean, if one or two of them, if one or two of them, get affected by the election, I think that would be an amazing change in New Mexico. They just seem to be. I find judges in New Mexico as well. And I served on the judiciary, and I've had my conversations about judges and with judges at this table and for years. When I was in the legislature, there's a very NIMBY response to judges. You'll go down to places like Roswell, and they will rail against the judges, except the judges in Roswell.
Gotcha.
They'll rail against the judges in Albuquerque, but not the judges in Silver City.
I hate all lawyers except my lawyer.
That's right. And so I mean, I think that now you're asking them, and then the last thing I'd say is that the judges kind of seem to stick together. I mean, you're going to be hard pressed to find a judge in Roswell tell you should oust Charlie Daniels as a Supreme Court justice. I mean, they're just not going to say it. They're just going to let it go. And I think people are looking for that person. And then I think the last thing that's a huge deal is, you really can't go to the people who work with them every day, right? You can't go to a lawyer and say, tell me how crappy that judge is, because lawyers, first of all, can't say it. Second of all, it'd be economic suicide to go out and tell people.
Dan makes a good point, Sophie. Then how does one judge these people? I would anticipate if one wanted to put money into this and put out a record of judges in their record of release versus jailing, you could do that kind of thing. But that's a very tricky sort of metric. It's
so something that I think is interesting and not well understood about the judiciary is that it does have a self-regulating mechanism in the appeals process.
Okay.
And we saw a really interesting decision out of the New Mexico Supreme Court regarding setting of bail with Judge Whitaker. And essentially, Judge Whitaker issued an order that allowed somebody to go off without bail. It was appealed up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court issued a clarification as to how the bail bonding process should work. So there is that kind of self-regulating, self-cleansing system that goes on. There's also a system in which judges may be recommended for non-retention. We saw that with Judge Raffleson a couple of years ago. And I think voters, to the extent that they're paying attention, are often paying attention to those sorts of recommendations. New Mexico, though, is unusual in that not all states actually vote for their judges. And there is a sense, I think a pretty strong sense, that it's not a great system. That forcing judges to run may lead to unintended consequences, whether they're conscious on the part of the judiciary or on the part of the electorate or not, and that a system of appointment and then removal in certain cases may be better than requiring our judges to sit for election.
Harry, it's one of those feel-good things. The citizens involved, we get a say in these things, but as these guys are pointing out, it's complicated. If you don't even know these people, you have no metrics to be able to judge them.
And no basis of knowledge to which, by which you can judge whether a judge is a good judge or a bad judge. I've lived in 9 other states. This is the first state I've ever lived in where I had to vote on judges, and I remember seeing this in my first ballot and thinking, why am I being asked to vote on this? And if you look at the website, and I don't encourage people to do that because it's pretty moronic, but if you do, what are they really complaining about? They're really complaining about the bail system, but it's important to bear in mind what bail is. It's about allowing people in pre-trial detention who have not been convicted to leave jail to make sure that they return for trial. It's not meant to be a punishment. And so it feels like it's a diagnosis of the wrong sort of problem. And more to the point, I would defy any non-lawyer to really understand anything related to due process protections or ultimately what makes Judge A good judge and Judge B a bad judge.
Exactly right. In like sitting in jail for 2 years without a hearing, and the reason these things came to be in the first place,
is that
bail
these were
reform,
poor people
that's
that
right.
weren't able
That's
to
right.
bail out.
Exactly right. Meredith, the judge thing again is tricky. But are we erring on the correct side here by having the citizen have a say in this? And we just have to go with it.
I'm very against further politicization of the judiciary.
Okay.
I think this is a populist movement. I was surprised to see it come up in the Albuquerque mayoral race, where one of the candidates said we have to hold judges accountable. They are accountable. They're accountable through the appellate system. They're accountable through peer review. When judges have done egregious things in New Mexico, and they've been removed. To me, if a judge has to let someone go who commits a crime, they're not doing that because they want the person to commit a crime. It's often because of a lapsed deadline, something didn't happen in that case. And I don't want to live in a state where I can be held and incarcerated indefinitely without someone intervening because, places where that happens would be, Russia, China. We don't want that in New Mexico.
Exactly right. Let me ask you guys a quick question. We'll finish off with this. Things you're looking for in this legislative session, anything that's going to be coming up that kind of rings your bell a little bit. Sophie, I'll start with you. Is there something either you wish would happen or you're predicting that could possibly happen this session that could be interesting?
So this is in some ways picking up on what we've been talking about this entire episode. There is so much focus right now on crime, funding for our prosecutors, et cetera. And I touched on this before. I think it's really important that civil legal services not be overlooked. We have situations in the state where employees are subject to wage theft, where tenants have issues with their landlords. It's not just crime that makes life more difficult in a state like ours. It can also be the stuff that really falls into the civil side of the courts. And if we don't have sufficient funding for New Mexico Legal Aid, for the Senior Citizens Law Center, and for the organization I will disclose that I'm on the board of, Law Access New Mexico, then I think that we create additional problems that will have to be
Appreciate you bringing that up.
later.
That's right from the streets, as they say. Dan, anything coming up that...
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. There's a couple things. One of them is I thought the Democrats' response to the governor's State of the State, basically having a press conference saying we're so done with you and here's our agenda. We're really not listening. It's going to be interesting to see how that parcels itself out over the next 30 days. It seems to me like the Democrat leadership pretty much drew a line and said, look, we're going to be here, you're not, so do whatever you want for the next 28 days.
Sure.
We're going to just be fine when you're gone. The other thing, too, is, it's going to be interesting to see if there's finally some parity between New Mexico State athletics and UNM athletics. Got to get some money for the Aggie football team. Bowl winners.
Bowl winners. There you go. Split a minute between you guys. Harry, what do you got?
What I would be really looking for is how state employees get treated. So there was a line in the Democratic response thanking state employees who have gone without raises and in fact have had increased pension contributions and higher health insurance costs. And you've got a lot of folks in the state who have been working very, very hard who haven't gotten any recognition. They didn't get that from the governor. I want to see if they get it from the legislature.
Point there. Interesting point. Merritt,
I
what do
want
you
to see
think?
a budget pass. You can insert any clip from last year's legislature of me talking on the show. I want to see the budget pass. I want to see the budget pass on time. I'm interested in the notion that the governor also mentioned pre-K programs and at the same time, CYFD, more child advocate workers. That's been badly needed. I'm not so interested in pre-K as I am in, there's some things a pre-K teacher can't fix, and you have to have the social worker and the child advocates go in. So I'm hopeful
distinction there. Yeah,
I'm hopeful that will get some traction.
Good stuff, all. Great follow-up. Thank you.